All right, in three, two, one. What's up, everybody? It is Beyond the Headset, where we talk about the most exciting news in VR, AR, Web3, AI, all the futuristic tech. I am your co-host, Rick. I'm an XR developer and hoping to get really involved in the industry.
And I am one of your other co-hosts, Jones. I've been in the tech space for about 5 years now and been in the NFT and web space for about 2. Absolutely true believer about Web3 and digital property rights, and I think that they will be fundamental for an open metaverse. So I'm excited to be bringing news on Web3 every week and discussing here with Rick. So Rick, to kick things off, do you want to start us off on a 10-minute segment on the newest happenings in AR/VR?
I do very much so.
Hell yeah! All right, I got the timer up, so whenever you're ready, give me the nod, and I'll start it up. All right, you ready? All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom. 10
Bang.
minutes.
Okay, some news from our massive Chinese tech conglomerate ByteDance and their new headset, the Pico.
Oh, wow.
They have partnered with a company I've always thought was really cool, which is Wave VR, and Calvin Harris, who will be doing a VR concert, I believe next week. But Wave is cool because there's been like VR experiences in the past where like I don't know, you think of like the Fortnite concerts where like Travis Scott did a Fortnite concert and it's like this pre-recorded thing. It's a cool visual thing to look at, but it's more like an immersive music video than it is anything else. But Wave VR has this whole setup at their studio where Calvin, I assume, is going to head over there, and they put all these like finger trackers and face trackers, and he performs live, and you get dumped in a lobby with a bunch of other people watching his performance live, and it's got like crazy visuals. It's got a lot of like cool features. It's pretty social, I think. I don't know about the mic capabilities, but I just get excited about this stuff because I mean I think I would still kind of prefer the whole VR chat underground scene just because it's so impressive and so immersive, but big experiences like that can really introduce people to the concept of like experiencing live music in VR, which is something I'm very stoked on as one of the potential applications of VR going forward.
Yeah, that's dope. I mean, I remember you took me down to the Tube VR and had a whole kind of underground session there, and it was dope. So I guess question on the Wave VR, will it be a similar thing where, say I was participating similar to VR chat, I'd have an avatar, I'd be interacting in the world similarly?
Yeah, there's a bunch of avatars, and I think it works like Calvin has a screen in front of him. I don't think he's wearing a headset, but he's got all this like tracking stuff. And
do you need the ByteDance headset to participate?
Yeah, I think it's a Pico exclusive. I'm not 100% sure.
Gotcha.
They stream this a lot on like YouTube, Twitch. At least in the past, they would stream them. So there'll be ways for you to like join, but I think the most interactive way would be to, I don't know. Not many people in America have a Pico 4 at this point.
What could you give a little background on the whole Pico thing? So is this headset live? Is this a new version, and what's the timing on this again?
Okay, so Pico is by ByteDance, owner of TikTok. It came after the Quest. The software looks eerily similar to the Quest software, the whole operating system, very similar. However, they had the advantage of releasing it like a year and a half, 2 years after Quest 2 dropped. So they have some nice features on the headset where it's like it's way lighter and flatter because they use these things called pancake lenses, which like massively decrease the amount of space your headset needs to take up just for the lenses. So they're like really light, but they only dropped in Europe to start and then delayed their North America launch. So I'm guessing, I don't know. It's mostly Europeans who own it, but it's good to have competitors to Meta, and they're legitimate competitors now.
Well, this is cool because I've only understood ByteDance as the TikTok owner. So do you envision Pico and TikTok having some kind of overlap there, or do you think they're pretty different things?
I would imagine at some point there's some sort of integration. I don't know what that would look like because TikTok is very much like a 2D screen app. I don't know how you re-envision that for like a 3D space, but I'm sure like I know Facebook on Instagram, they're pushing this thing where like it's cringy, but you can like from Horizons post clips immediately to your Instagram story. I could totally see them doing something like that, which
Wow.
would be cool, honestly. Like, I think I'm
Yeah.
only saying it's cringy for Facebook because Meta Horizons is just
It's
such a
so brutal.
shit show right now.
Yeah.
Um,
That's okay. Also on the ByteDance note, so TikTok VR, are they making a play almost like Apple where they have a bunch of products, or are those the main two?
uh, I I think they're making a play. I don't know. I'm sure ByteDance owns way more companies than even I realize. I mean, if you think about the other big Chinese tech company, Tencent, they own what or WeChat, which is like a massive app.
Hmm.
And we don't use it in America, but it's like huge abroad, and the Chinese market's massive. They also have a huge gaming component. They own a huge amount of Epic Games. They own a huge amount of Riot Games.
Interesting.
I think there's a lot of these tech companies, and I was going to talk about Microsoft a little bit later too, but they're all getting like they're trying to branch between like social and gaming, and I think just because they're all realizing that gaming is becoming so like the social component of gaming is so critical these days that
Yeah,
any sort of social media company is looking at gaming and they're like, okay, we want a piece of this pie. I don't know how we're going to
definitely.
do it, but
Two more follow-up questions here. One is, can you do VR chat on Pico? And two is, what is the sentiment in kind of the VR community on Pico and ByteDance?
yeah. So first question is, yes, you can do VR chat in Pico. I'm
Gotcha.
99% sure. I might need to like double check that and make sure I'm not wrong, but I'm like, VR chat is like the
We say what's on our mind on this podcast.
yeah.
We
You
we
everyone
check facts
fact
after.
check me and just shit on me in the comments whenever I just lie, because I don't always know what I'm doing and it's hard to look things up quickly in the headset.
Mhm.
Anyways, probably VR chat's on it because VR chat's one of the biggest VR apps out there, so I would assume they would want to be on potentially one of the next big headsets. Second
Cool.
question, general sentiment from what I've gathered is kind of like a yay, this is good. They're like Meta pretty much has no competitor on the like casual consumer side because no one else can price their headset at like $300-$400.
True.
Enthusiasts have plenty of options in the thousand and up range, but so yeah, it's good that there's more competition there with another big company that can kind of subsidize the headset. It's not great that it's ByteDance, which I think people just are naturally skeptical of for
Yeah,
political reasons and
totally.
privacy reasons. TikTok just has an insane amount of information on you. The Chinese government has a piece of all major Chinese companies. I don't know if they're actually doing anything with that data, but like people are worried
Yeah.
about it, and I think kind of rightfully so. So
Well,
it's
yeah, I mean, I guess that's what inspired the question is because you hear all this stuff about TikTok and even in the US government even talking about TikTok and if it should continue in the US. And so if you think about something that's potentially even more immersive, like
yeah.
a whole VR world, like what the sentiment of that is
Well,
here,
dude, they're
it's
talking
pretty
about
interesting.
banning TikTok in this country. Like,
Yeah,
if
exactly.
their VR headset takes off, the amount of data you can get from someone based on like their face movement. If you got eye tracking in the
Hmm.
headset, read this study a while back, and it's like eye tracking can tell you the creepiest amount of information. Like the way your eyes move can tell them like your gender, your race, your like sexual preference, what you're interested in, what you dislike. The amount of information you can gleam off of just people's movement is insane. So like if
No
VR really
way.
takes off, I
Jeez.
still feel like VR is kind of like not big enough to really draw
Yeah, a
scrutiny,
little
but
niche.
it's in the
Well, I mean, yeah, it's
future.
just
Yeah.
interesting if they're already planting the seeds in this kind of market, especially with, a big blowout like Calvin Harris. If there are already these intense conversations about TikTok, if something this immersive starts to take a foothold,
Yeah.
that will be very interesting about how that plays out. So in terms of ByteDance, that's the big news. To recap, Calvin Harris launch of their next headset. That's what it was.
Headset's already out. They're just I think Pico, the one place they need to catch up is like exclusive content. Meta just
Gotcha.
went on a buying spree and bought so many of the promising small developers. So like they have plenty of exclusives now that Pico just has no chance of getting. So they need to like
Okay, got you.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what's that. But it's not like a new edition. It's like this is just purely an event, just to
Yeah, just
have fun.
it's
Yeah,
marketing
that's
event for Pico.
cool.
It's a marketing event for Waves and Calvin Harris and whatever.
What's your thought on Pico? Are you interested in it? Like, or would you consider getting one?
Yeah, I definitely would. I mean, I don't know. I would prefer to stay in the Quest line just because, especially seeing like software is really important to me. The headset itself, hardware wise, looks better on the Pico side. It's got full color pass through. It's got full color pass through is just when you see the real world through your headset, it's full color. Apparently, it looks really nice.
Oh, wow.
And then it's way lighter, and I want a more comfortable headset.
Yeah.
However, Quest is the next Quest 3, which I predicted won't even come out this year, but it will be much lighter. It'll have full color pass through. And like they have more exclusives. Pico just seemed to copy the operating system a little too closely, so I've just kind of view them as like a follower at the moment.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I would stay Quest.
Got you. Got you. All right, you got 1 second left. Anything as timer going off.
I just
Timer's
want
off.
a
Any
nice headset from Valve is the next headset I want to buy. Is
got you.
that's what I'm looking forward to. But
Okay.
I don't
Heard
think
it
that's
there
gonna
first.
happen.
Valve next headset to buy from our friend Rick.
Yes.
Valve. Keep an eye on it. All right. All right. I'm putting
Let's hear
10
it.
minutes on the clock for myself. So what I got here first off.
I'm grabbing a
is-
drink. Don't mind me reaching over
I
to
thought you were coming over for some kind of handshake, passing the baton over to me. Alex, hilarious. All right, here we go. 10 minutes on the clock. So, all right, this first 10-minute segment, I'm going to go into the NFT space. So, three main kind of updates, announcements from different projects in the NFT space that I think are worth talking about. And when I say NFT space, what I'm particularly talking about are these kind of PFP projects like Bored Ape, Azuki, things that get people hyped. So, first one, the one I am by far the most excited for, and also before I get into this, not financial advice at all. This is just discussion, but disclosure, I am a holder of both Azuki and I have Mutant Ape. So, Azuki, I'm such an Azuki maxi. I think Azuki is legitimately unbelievable. The art on these characters is so cool. It's anime. It just looks unbelievable, and you could just when you see it, I feel like you immediately imagine all of the potential lore, the use cases for IP, all that stuff. So they've been kind of slowly building this lore with the community. Like they'll announce, different like ruins or the garden, or they'll do different kind of like little pieces, like almost breadcrumbs as they're kind of developing out this whole ecosystem. But yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of the mint, and they had an absolutely huge announcement that like I was legit freaking out for like half of the day. It was so sick. So it was basically this this new world, this immersive world they called I'm just blanking on the name. It's like Halumia, I believe it is. And basically
Nice.
it was so cool. I got to send you the link after this so you can check it, but it's not immersive with VR, but it's on their website, and it's basically this whole world they mapped out with that points to a ton of the different lore and also kind of drops more breadcrumbs about where they could go. But it's so peaceful. The art is absolutely gorgeous. There's like a million different things you can explore, like a skate park, Moda, Museum of Dope Art, a town square. There's just like, it's this whole world. And so you can just like, you can spend hours on it just looking around. But the reason I thought it was so cool is because it's such a great example of decentralized IP, basically like community and brand working together to expand the story. So in this world, Halumia, not only do they have things that they decided as a core team would be cool, but they also included a bunch of stuff from the community. So there's all these memes that go around, like one was like dressing up your character in like a ninja mask or something. And so in the world, they created like the dojo or something like that, where it's, and how it works is that they already set up this collector page for everyone where you can connect your Azuki to the Azuki site, and you get emblems and badges based on what you participate in. So if you participate in these memes, like with the community, you get badges that like say you've participated in them. And then if you collect certain NFTs in the collection, you get certain emblems so it's almost like kind of rewarding collection. But the coolest thing about this whole world is that the dojo that I was talking about this meme, it's connected to the badges you have. So if you participated in that meme, your character actually gets shown in the dojo, and you can click through and you can look at like that actual character's profile. And so I think it's just so cool. They're basically like taking steps on the way to essentially building out this whole world, and not like announcing it at first, but just like taking steps to build it out. And the reason I'm so excited about this is because it gets all into my thesis that the future of gaming will not necessarily be games as we know in the traditional sense, like Modern Warfare, and maybe they'll coexist, but a huge class of games, in air quotes, will be experiences that are built out on the blockchain where your in-game assets are your NFTs and your character is just your digital profile picture. And so you're going to get all these brands like Yuga, like Bored Ape, like Azuki that are essentially building out like games. Like I'm interacting in the Azuki ecosystem, like I'm collecting things, I'm interacting with the community, I'm building out the lore of my character, almost like, you know, a game like Skyrim where you're kind of you have a character and you're going through this world. And it's just so cool watching it kind of get laid out piece by piece where they're not coming in like we're building a game, but it almost does feel like what they're doing is they're kind of building out this lore, they're building out this community, this game, and you're seeing it build piece by piece. So that's why I was so stoked on it, because it kind of was evidence to my thesis of that, like you're gonna get all of these different community experiences on the blockchain that is interoperable, real money, real value with these in-game assets. And so you're gonna get this whole new class of like gaming, but it's not necessarily like real games. It's just like these experiences that are built out, and you kind of, you know, I don't know, just like be part of the community and see where they take it. So that was the first piece of news. We can stop there because I know that was a lot, but I'm an Azuki Maxi, and they just keep delivering. And so yeah, I'm just fascinated to see how it all plays out in the future. Because like right now, you know, you can't get in VR in it, but you could totally see how in the future you could, like you could maybe connect your, you know, goggles or whatever, immerse yourself in this world, like, and, you know, interact with other people. And it's just so cool. I'll send you the link out.
So,
So you
oh
can see it.
yeah, I need to check it out. It's a like 2D world that do you have an avatar that you like walk around in the world with, or do you?
No, so you
is it
don't
just
actually
like
walk
a
around it.
visual experience?
It's basically just a visual experience where you can zoom in on different like houses, but they have like lore on different houses you can click on. So you don't go in the houses. So I guess it's not necessarily like interactive with your character right now in the way that you can walk through the streets, but in the way it is interactive in the way of like if you participate in this meme, your avatar, your digital identity is displayed on the like piece of property or whatever. And so
Got it.
in that way the digital identity kind of maps onto this world in a really cool way that I haven't necessarily seen done before.
Yeah, it feels kind of like a weird take on Dungeons and Dragons, which I don't know if you've had any experience with it, but
I
it's like
honestly haven't. I haven't. I
it's
can't
very
lie.
like there's a dungeon master, and it's like the OG gaming, and I've been playing it for a while now. It's pretty fun because it's like totally malleable. There's no like video games, there are real restrictions to what you can do because there are hardware restrictions. There's, you know, the time it takes to develop things. You get restricted. Like you can't do literally anything. Like
Hmm.
in Skyrim, like there are NPCs you can't kill because if you kill them, it'd ruin the game because they're essential to the story. So you just like knock them
Gotcha.
out. There's limitations. And then Dungeons and Dragons, there's a dungeon master who just it's all kind of like word of mouth, and there's gameplay mechanics, but like if you say I want to do a 360 and like shoot an arrow at someone and jump off of this cliff and like do this thing that like no video game will let you do, the dungeon master can just be adaptable. And it kind of sounds like you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like the owners or the creators of Azuki are kind of like dungeon masters for the Azuki community. Like the community creates the content, and then Azuki kind of like not moderates it, but like is like the glue. They like pull it together into something that's actually
Yeah, that's
usable.
actually an interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting way to phrase it. I guess it is kind of like that, except in this case, if the dungeon master also push forward like their own lore as well, or almost like
Yeah,
steer the ship to some extent.
they do. That's actually like, yeah, that's exactly what they do. Is like there's set stories they give you, but like the dungeon master can, you know, pursue different storylines, and if they see something that's interesting, they can focus on that. Which is, I think I hadn't even thought until you talked about this. I hadn't even thought about some of these communities that way, but it's kind of like an interesting like
Dude,
evolution
it's
on
fascinating.
that.
This is one of the things I find. But instead of doing the other two NFT updates, let's keep on this topic. The topic of decentralized IP, I think, is so fascinating because so basically how it works is like, so Azuki has this overarching brand, right? Like they have a lot of awareness, at least in the Web3 space. Obviously, in the future, it'd be ideal to get more into Web2 space, but that will come. So basically, as me as a holder of an Azuki, I own the commercial rights to my asset. And so the idea with decentralized IP, and you see this playing out with Bored Ape too, where Bored Ape has a huge brand, right? And so if you're an owner of a Bored Ape asset, And you actually see this happening. There's someone who made a burger joint, almost like McDonald's or whatever, but it's called Bored and Hungry. And so because they own the commercial rights, they can actually use their Bored Ape as like the marketing material for their restaurant, which they are. It's called Bored and Hungry. The whole mascot is their ape. And so they're able to tap into the hype of Bored Ape. And so it attracts more and more people to that restaurant because it's like, oh shit, Bored Ape, like I know that. I'm gonna hit this restaurant. And then from the Bored Ape perspective, they're like, hell yeah, like that's dope. It just expands the brand even more. So when you kind of have these rights of the holders, they can work on their own stuff and leverage the brand, and the brand actually leverages the user, creating content for them. So it's almost like the incentives are so aligned. It's fascinating compared to something like Disney where, it's kind of a one-way connection. They put out a movie, you watch it, you can't influence that at all. And so what I think is really cool, and like a prime example of this with the Azuki Halumia situation is, so there's someone who had an NFT. I think it was a Beans, which is like a derivative or another project from Chiro Labs that relates to Azuki. So they basically they created this new coffee bean thing called Red Bean Coffee, and they're like selling it. And so they're using their commercial rights to tap into and so a bunch of the Web3 community like drinks Red Bean Coffee. So they're like kind of sexually done. But the coolest thing about Halumia is they put like in the center of the experience, they put a whole billboard that's like advertising Red Bean Coffee. And so that's so cool because me as a holder, I'm like, whoa, this incentivizes me a lot to work with my IP to build something out because I know that the team will recognize that and will include it in like their main experiences. And so you could think about if this kind of experience gets more and more built out, then people are coming and they're seeing, Azuki's kind of highlighting all of the stuff that the community's doing. So you're almost like building together to create this world. It's such a cool way. So the incentives are so aligned between community and kind of core owner. So yeah, decentralized IP, fascinating.
That's
that timer just went off. But okay. Any last comments on that before we move?
No, I think it's interesting. Just regardless of the blockchain component, just the whole concept of like community created IP has always kind of been more of like a private personal thing. Like in the sense of, I'm thinking about Dungeons and Dragons again, but even like unofficial. What do they call it? Fan fiction. It's like some fan fiction does like get traction, but it's not official. And like Dungeons and Dragons is meant to be a very personal experience with like you and your friends playing it. And like, except for a few like high profile cases of people streaming their games, like Critical Role, they're a really famous like streaming group who does it. And it's essentially like they're coming up with their own IP. I don't know. I feel like it feels pretty new that like it's kind of like uncontrolled in a way.
Yeah.
That like can have negative and positive repercussions. And I'm just kind of like curious to see when it's like anyone can buy in and start participating, like what sort of content gets made, how far you can take it, what are the limitations to that sort of thing. Is what I think about.
I totally agree. I think it is so fascinating because to your point, there are potential negative things where like, and I think there might be things in the contracts where it says stuff about like things you can't use it for, like, very, but like hate speech type. But at the same time, then that kind of gets into a question of like, well, the decentralized, like I own this asset, I should be able to kind of do it. So I don't know. But yeah, that whole topic is fascinating. We could go in way deeper on another episode, but yeah, we can cut there. So what do you got next? What do you got next for your next piece of action?
All right, I hate to do it to him, but we're going back to the Apple leaks. Keep flowing. The dam has burst, and the Apple leaks are just coming in so hot right now.
Love it.
A bunch of just like disparate ones. I feel like it's usually like the rumors throughout the years. They can be true, they can be false, but they're usually a bit sporadic about like any sort of tech. They like Nintendo, they like rumors about the new Switch come out like once every like 6 months. But usually when new tech is about to come out, the rumors start really flowing. So it's speculative, but I feel like the amount of rumors and leaks and everything is pointing to this being very inevitable. Finally, this is the year the Apple headset comes out. It might not because it's delayed to the second half of the year, like I mentioned in a prior episode. So it might cut it close, but so the new rumor mill that gives me hope that it's definitely coming this year. I'm so stoked. It's for the first time been sent out to third-party developers. It's been entirely in-house. It's been entirely secret, but they're sending it to like high profile developers They've partnered with Unity is another leak, which is that's
Nice.
the two big game engines that like most developers make games on, are Unity and Unreal. And then if you're a big studio, sometimes you just make your own engine. But like probably the majority of games on the iPhone, I would guess, are made in Unity. Unity is like very favored by like indie game creators. So it's interesting to see that they're partnering with them. It's not surprising. If they want good games on it, they need to have an easy to develop in software environment, and I don't think it's that easy to develop like a 3D game in Apple's whole development ecosystem. I'm currently developing some games in that ecosystem. It's not too bad. I kind of like it. It's very interesting the way you can combine. One of the things I'm working on now, just this is kind of a side note, but it relates to this whole thing, is Apple has these like machine learning frameworks, and they have a whole AR kit framework. Their AR framework seems to work the best of all the ones I've tried developing. I've tried Niantic, which is like the Lightship development system, and that's the Pokemon Go developers are really big in the field of AR now. They're one of like the top dogs. They have a really nice system, but Apple's is nuts, and I'm so excited about just how easy it is to combine machine learning with that. So like I can look across the room at my piano, and my headset will recognize it's a piano, and it can tell me which notes I'm playing. It can overlay information on that. And the machine learning component is essential just for like image recognition. So it can recognize, you know, like what you're doing on like what's in your environment, how you can use it. Can you take this into the virtual world? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's the Apple headset seems pretty inevitable. It's coming in hot. Another interesting part is that gets me really excited is apparently I think it's iOS, we're at, I don't know, are we at 17 at this point? Whatever is supposed to come out in the fall is it's literally losing features because they're transitioning so many resources to the XR OS, which is their extended reality.
That's cool.
Because I've kind of been under the impression that this is obviously a priority for Apple, but they have kind of a small-ish team that's going really hard on it. So the fact that they're taking resources away from their major money-making units is A, interesting, and B, really exciting that they're like really investing in the software side of things, because I think a lot of people complain in the AR and VR space that we have the technology now, it's just the software isn't good enough. So
totally. So when you say Apple's partnering with one of the game engines, does that mean that's the only game engine people can use to create for that headset?
I mean, I think there will probably be workarounds, but the other big one, Unreal, which I'm learning to develop in Unreal right now, and I love it. It's by Epic Games. That's what Fortnite's made on. It's like the most professional. If you want to make like a professional 3D, really beautiful looking game, you can do it on Unity, but like big developers use Unreal. If they don't have their own in-house engine, like big name developers use Unreal. That one's interesting too, because Apple and Epic Games, who makes Unreal Engine, have the worst of beefs right now with the whole Fortnite situation. I don't know if you know about that. I don't know if you want to get into it.
Talk about it. Yeah.
But it's interesting. So essentially, it gets to the whole Apple App Store fee situation, where Epic Games, kudos to them. They put a workaround. So the way Apple does things is they take 30% off of, like, if you have a game, any payments made in that game, they get 30% of it if it's on their App Store. Epic Games said that's kind of unacceptable. Fortnite is making an absolute fortune, but we're not making that much off of the App Store because they're just taking such a massive cut of it. So they allowed you to I don't know exactly what they did. I don't know if they referenced, like, they did something to work around the App Store fee. Like, they referenced, you can buy these assets on our website, you can get the Battle Pass elsewhere.
Through that.
And so they knew Apple would pull the app off the App Store, and they did. And they were kind of hoping for that. And now they've been in a lawsuit for the last year and a half, where the goal of Epic Games is to kind of finally break the just aggressive 30% fee.
Wow,
I highly recommend following Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, on Twitter. He tweets his thoughts about like all this stuff a lot, and it's pretty interesting. People have mixed opinions on him. I really like him. He seems fairly principled, especially for one of these larger businesses in the gaming industry. He seems like he at least cares somewhat about the principle about, you know, enabling better development in the gaming space, in the mobile space, and not hamstringing developers with these insane fees, which he's kind of done himself with the Epic Games Store, but that's a
So
whole
right
nother
now,
issue.
does that mean that no one can use Epic Games on their iPhone?
Fortnite is not available on the iPhone anymore, which if you think
Wow.
about how much money they've made off of that game,
Well,
if
so what
they
was the backlash besides the business aspect? What was the backlash from users? Like, I mean, I gotta imagine people weren't super pumped with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I think it's probably a very young demographic that mainly plays Fortnite on mobile phones. So I don't have like the best idea of like, are they mad at Apple? Are they mad at Epic Games?
Yeah, I wonder if they. Yeah, I understand.
But I just the amount of money they left on the table with this lawsuit is insane. Like Fortnite at its prime, taking it off of the biggest app store for like a year and a half, 2 years
Yeah,
is
that's pretty badass. I
which
love that. Just to
I
further the
respect,
mission.
regardless of what you think about Tim Sweeney. Like that's a badass move, and if these lawsuits do kind of break this like stranglehold Apple has on App Store fee collection, like that could be great for developers going forward, especially indie game developers and like big studios who want to port a big game to the iOS. Like it might not even be worth it. The costs, you gotta get over that like 30% hump. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Okay, question for you as you were talking, something I was thinking about with the Unity and Unreal situation. So if you're, in Web 2 or whatever, developing an app, you can develop it in, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think you can develop it in like React, Ruby, there's a
Hmm.
bunch of different languages, Python, you can develop an app or a website for. And you can use that on the App Store. So you as a
Yep.
developer have a lot of different options. Is this going to the point where as a game developer to use the app to have your game on the Apple headset, you can only use Unity. You can't develop an Unreal in order to get that game onto that specific piece of hardware.
I think it's going to be very difficult if you're an Unreal developer. The good thing about the development community is like there are these people out there who just will dedicate their lives to making like really niche specific case hard or software, which is awesome. I applaud these people. They do some of like the most crazy stuff that seems so unrewarding to work on. But so I think someone out there will make some sort of workaround for Unreal Engine to be able to easily make, but I think it's going to be a lot of headaches. And I think if Apple's directly working with Unity,
Does
to
Quest have any kind of thing? I guess I'm just thinking about someone who, say, someone wants to get into VR development or XR
Mhm.
development or whatever. Like, if you're a coder doing Python or React, like, pretty solidly that whatever one you choose, I'm sure there's drawbacks of each. I don't code. I'm sure there's drawbacks of each, but you can make an app, you can put it on the App Store. It would be kind of unfortunate if you spent, 6 years learning Unreal and then Apple comes in with this dope headset and they're like, oh, sorry, your game that you've worked on and the skill you've learned actually can't be applied here.
Yeah, so I think the most people developing for VR and AR probably lean towards Unity anyways.
Gotcha.
And the other thing is C++, which is the language used by Unreal, is way, 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 way more complicated than C Sharp, which is the language used by Unity. So in general, I've used both at this point, and it's not too difficult going from one engine to the other. However, it's much easier to go from Unreal to Unity than it is to go from Unity to Unreal, just because of the language thing. However,
Gotcha.
Unreal has this whole blueprints thing, which means you don't even have to code to make a game. So I don't know. At the end of the
So
day,
is this, or go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say it's not
that's it.
too hard to flip between them. It might be kind of a headache. I'm sure really dedicated Unreal Engine developers will find a way to develop something and then kind of like translate it into the necessary, frameworks that need to be done to get it onto like the Apple headset that comes out.
Got you. Okay, last question because the timer just went off. But so is that a good way to think about it or not? Like
What?
equating kind of Unity and Unreal, equating that to almost like the Python, React, Ruby, like that there's different, or is it kind of different?
Yeah, well, I guess I think what is a better comparison, and I'll try and do a few examples, but like if you make music, it's Logic versus Ableton. If you're like a photo editor, it's like Photoshop versus I don't know, photo. There's a but yeah, it's kind of
Canva,
like this
maybe.
like big tool set, and a lot of the
Yeah.
tools are the same between them. You just kind of need to relearn like user interfaces and I think it is I mean Python and React is a little bit different because they're different, like one's a language, one is more of a framework. but it is
Yeah.
kind of similar. I guess
But I
maybe
guess the difference to that example would be if Spotify was like, you can only upload your music if you used Ableton. Like Logic users, you can't upload your music to Spotify.
yeah, or we're going to implement some sort of barrier that makes it really hard. I wouldn't surprise me if Apple very intentionally did that to Unreal too after this fucking lawsuit where they just hate each other now apparently.
Yeah.
So,
That's so interesting though. Like that dynamic doesn't really play out in anything else where your tool set can limit where you're able to be.
yeah. Well,
Right?
I mean, it's like
That's
Unity like is really good for 2D games and like Unreal is really bad for 2D games. So there it's one of those things where like different tool sets have different strengths, but like it's weird when you can partner with companies and like kind of make one of the tool sets handicapped. And I don't know, I feel like I
yeah.
don't see that as much in like Ableton, Logic, Photoshop. They don't there
Yeah,
isn't
it would be
this
like
like
Apple was like, "Yo, in order to get your music on Apple Music, you can only use Logic," and it would
yeah,
somehow detect.
it's just like schemy big dick business moves being made to like
Yeah,
handicap people coming after you is my assumption. Maybe there's some other reason technical that I don't know, but I don't know. I would prefer if I could develop on Unreal for this thing, and I think it's going to be kind of a pain to use Unreal.
yeah, huh, super interesting. All right, I'll get into my next piece. So this one might be shorter than the 10 minutes, but I'll put it up anyways. But big announcement. The reason it might be shorter is because I don't totally understand the tech of it all. So
That's fine.
we'll dive into it.
I'm gonna hit you with so many technical questions this time.
Okay. All right. So a huge announcement. So AWS, everyone knows AWS. I think the reason why I'm going to struggle to explain this is because I don't honestly totally even understand how
Hey,
AWS
great
works.
news! I'm in a cloud computing class right now.
No
and I'm
way.
learning
Okay.
AWS,
This is
so-
great news. So, okay. So basically AWS, correct me if I'm wrong, has a huge market share, like by
Mhm.
far the biggest in the cloud computing. So they just partnered with Avalanche, which is one of the blockchains. I know we had this whole discussion last year, but there's so many blockchains, but they're one of the most known too. It's kind of like Solana, Avalanche, near Ethereum. So they're up there. But let me read this quote because I mean that's kind of the news. AWS, huge, like the biggest market share cloud, whatever hosting platform, has partnered with blockchain. Huge. All right, let me read this quote from one of the guys from AWS because I think it's pretty awesome. This is the VP and global head of startups at AWS. He goes, this was his quote in kind of the press release. He goes, looking forward, Web3 and blockchain is inevitable. Howard Wright, VP and global head of startups at AWS, said to TechCrunch. No one can call the time or date or quarter that it's going to happen, and it'll be mainstream, but we've seen the cycles of growth before. The velocity of this one seems like it's accelerating, and we're just excited to be a part of this. So I thought that was pretty cool of just like, I mean, this guy, that's a pretty big role at AWS, which is, one of the major one in cloud computing. He says that just seems like adding some credibility to the whole Web3 and blockchain movement. So yeah, again, can't explain too much about the technicals of what the actual partnership looks like. I think it's something on node deployment, but just kind of interesting and exciting news in the crypto world.
I just think it's interesting because the Web3 NFT news has just died out so hard. So it always, I don't know if it surprises me, but it's interesting when like it feels like little snippets come out from some of these huge companies and it's like, yeah, we're still working on this. Like
that is exactly the exciting
moving
thing.
Forward.
It's build season, baby. That's my prediction for 2023 is that you're going to see more and more of this stuff. And like, it's not because like you said in the last episode, the scam narrative was pushed so aggressively. And so you saw all this Web3 stuff.
I'm sorry. I get the scam. My Twitter messages and likes are just only these like Web3 scams. Still.
Hey, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not
yeah.
saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying that was the narrative. And I think that is what kind of fueled the fire. Because if there's ever a lot of like, what's the word? Kind of people with different opinions on like there's Web3 and then Web3 haters, that definitely fuels the fire. And it kind of fans the news because you have people on the other side being like, this sucks. But when it's just like this stuff where it's just like no one, can come at this as like this is a scam, it doesn't get as much attention because there's not as much of a,
Well, I think that's kind of good for the technology just from like I don't know. I just personally feel like it shouldn't have been from the get-go such a like it was treated as more of a front-end technology when it really is more of like honestly like a quirky SQL database verification technology. And so it just causes so much confusion when people treat it as so that I think one of the things that might, if it does make a big comeback, it's going to be like it just appears in the back end and users don't know, and it eventually just becomes the norm. That just seems like the way to that this will become like a technology people use in their day to day, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
I kind of agree with you. I think it's the underlying use case. Like when you see Instagram implementing digital collectibles and all these people not saying NFTs, not saying blockchain, just having you have this feeling of owning something digitally,
Yeah.
which is cool. And so I guess question for you, I'd love to learn more about the front end thing. Like what was the narrative around it being a front end technology?
Well, I mean, it's not literally a front end technology, but I think just NFTs and pictures and video and music being the face of it, like, I don't know.
Oh,
I
that's
feel like the
interesting.
conversation was not about the underlying technology at all. It was just
Yeah.
solely about
agree.
like
I
the
agree.
value of this picture
This
and like
picture of a monkey.
and also the NFT thing can get kind of weird too, where it's like you own a certificate that like says you
Points
own
to something else.
yeah, it's
Record
like
of
it
ownership.
points to this like web page that is the picture, and it's like that. I feel like blockchain can be used for more like hardy things than that like are useful, but no one saw that because the whole news cycle was just like these ugly apes and
okay.
like these
Yeah.
scams and like all this other shit where it's I don't know.
I think this is such a fascinating example of just mainstream narrative and news permeating it, just being kind of a toxic permeation, because everyone who actually took the time to understand what was going on like saw the value of it, and like that's the people who are still here. And so that's why I get so triggered by this NFT as a scam thing, because it's such a good example of like people not spending the time to actually think for themselves and just thinking through what they get told by some like mainstream news situation and think like, oh, it must be a scam. I'm not going to do any of my own research, but like it must be a scam.
So I agree and disagree. Like, definitely, if you look deeper, I'm still not fully convinced, but I see that there's potential for this to be more. But on the NFT front, it still is like kind of difficult for me to parse like what of these NFT collections is just a bit of a Ponzi scheme where they're just hyping it up to hopefully get more people involved. And like, I've just seen so many examples get called a scam, and then I compare that to another NFT collection that's considered legit, and I'm like,
Yeah, you're like, what's
it
the
just
difference?
the lines seem very blurred.
Okay,
And
should we-
I looked into Azuki too, and
Yeah.
there's controversy with that
Oh
founder.
yeah, yeah.
And I was very confused by that because he had these two NFT collections before. And I'll give what my take on it is as like
Give
not
it to me.
super, but it's like he had these two NFT collections before, and they were stupid. They were like a copy of some other NFT. They're dumb and ugly, and like eventually he's like, yeah, I'm not going to support this anymore. And then he made Azuki, and it seems like he's like made technical. It feels more legit because the owners of it are getting like literal physical products. They're getting like support. He's made technical changes to like how you mint and how you do all these things.
Yeah, dude, you did your research on it. That's
Yeah,
legit.
well, I try to understand it, but just going back to those, everyone in the Web3 community seems to hate the guy now because he abandoned these stupid, shitty projects, and like now he's a scam artist. And I'm like, I just don't understand what makes. If you just make a shitty NFT project, is that a scam, or like is it literally just like a
Dude, so
or objective
I think this is-
quality? I don't know.
I think this is a great example of just exactly kind of what I was saying of like there's so much noise. Like you have so many people in the space who don't know, not saying I know everything about what's going on, but people just like follow the mainstream narrative. And so if someone's like, oh, Zagabond's a scam artist, then like you're going to get a million other people following in and being like, oh yeah, he must be a scam artist, with like not knowing like anything about what they're talking about. And so you get like a lot of this, and then but also like it's so financialized that like if someone is not a part of Azuki, right, and they see this narrative, they're going to be more encouraged. Like that's some of it is pretty toxic, this culture where like they're probably going to jump on that and be like, oh, like the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt is like the whole thing, just FUD the hell out of Azuki to like make that price go lower. Then maybe they can
Well,
like,
that's what
pick
gets
up
such
it's like,
Ponzi scheme feels, where it's like
I totally
you're
hold on,
just
okay,
trying
this-
to like
this-
hype up your project to get the price higher. There's so much money involved.
yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with any of those takes about how a a lot, even the collections that are legit have some kind of like Ponzi-X nature to them, where you hype it up, that makes more money come in, that makes other people more excited about it, etc. Don't actually disagree with that. Just real quick on the Zagabond thing, in case you're ever listening to this, Z. I mean, dude, that's literally any entrepreneur ever. Is like you start different projects.
Yeah,
like,
that's
a lot
the
of
part
them are
that
shitty as
confused
hell.
me.
The
And I
same.
still don't understand why those are more scammy than other. Like, there's some of them feel scammy and they're considered legit, and like they make promises I don't think
so
they
there's
can keep.
yeah,
I don't know.
there's this thing about rugging where it's like if you launch a project, people mint it, and you don't really like continue the thing forever. It's kind of like you rug the project because people invested in it. But like it's all people who just don't understand how the world works is what it feels like. Or just have never like they're all just like 15-year-olds who like have no idea what the hell's going on. Because like that's literally any startup ever. Like if a VC invests in your startup and you
Right.
fails, you didn't rug it. You like it didn't work out. You just tried something new. Like okay, I could go on for that. But what I want to talk about again is okay, question for you. If you take away these projects, right? Like you don't even think about the Ponzi's of the collections. You don't even think about the collections. You just take NFTs as a token standard. Just the core concept of records of ownership on a digital decentralized ledger. What do you think about that?
Honestly, not fully sold. Like, though, as
So?
they stand right now, I don't know. It's just, and we've talked about this before. I'm not hostile towards the technology, but it just seems like I'm fine with that being a record of ownership, but it does feel a bit. Sorry, what?
Oh no, the timer just came off, so I was like, let's finish the thought. Though.
Yeah, no, we can keep going. This is
I'm curious to hear your take on this.
Continue. I don't know. It just feels like it's so much easier with physical objects to determine ownership, whereas with blockchain, to me, it feels like there has to be some sort of enforcing mechanism. Like if it's a JPEG, like what do we use JPEGs for generally? And it's like not much. Profile pictures, backgrounds to your PC, maybe. Maybe you print it out, but it's like if it's infinitely and perfectly replicable, how do you? I don't know how valuable.
That's the verification system.
I know, but I don't know. It's like how valuable is. I mean, I guess it's just whatever people decide it is valued, but it seems.
Well, that, but also, okay. So, example, say you're JPEG, right? So, say this podcast, right? Like we give out 10 images of us two because people want images of us two, obviously, and we're like, for those 10 people who collect those or who have those, who own those, we'll let you come in and sit on that nice couch right there. So say someone who's listening to this podcast goes like, oh, cool, I can't wait. And they basically right click, save that JPEG, right? So now they have it on their computer. They're like, hell yeah, can't wait, I'm going to come. But how the mechanism works is that in order to sit there and you have to prove that you actually own that. And the way you do that is by authenticating on the blockchain that you have a record of ownership of this image of
right.
And so in that way, that's the utility right there, is that the only way to prove you own this image is if you have a record of ownership of owning it on the blockchain, and you can get into this experience. But if you didn't and you just right click saved it, you couldn't, and there'd be no, like, you could have 1 million people sitting here without. So
I guess it's more of just me questioning the value of it, and I think it can only hit personally some sort of real mainstream use case once a lot of honestly centralized actors start really enforcing it, like Twitter. If someone else tries to copy your JPEG, they don't allow you to. They have some sort of verification system.
Well, I mean, they kind of have that right now with the hexagon.
Right, but is that... I mean, that is a verification system. But I mean, across the board, just all these companies verifying it in a way that, like, I don't know. If you're the only one who knows or cares that you're the owner, besides maybe some potential buyers, it feels moderately useful. Like, I can make up a profile picture right now and throw it on my page, even mint it if I want, but that feels, I don't know. It's just, people can copy it either way, if it's free, if it's expensive, and like...
Yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting conversation, because I feel like there's never really a conclusion that comes to it, because I feel like there's just different thoughts on it. Because the way I equated very similar to digital or physical art. Like people like owning art, and you can totally replicate that. Like it happens all the time. But there is a feeling of ownership that people like. And I actually don't. The only difference, the only argument I hear that's different is like, well, when you right click save, it's the exact same. But like with physical art, like maybe you could tell there's like different brushstrokes. It's like, okay, I don't think that really matters. Like you're not looking at these specific brushstrokes every time you look at your painting in your house. So I think it's literally the same with actually more beneficial things in the digital world, to be honest, like with being able to transfer across borders. That's a lot harder with physical assets.
That's the part that seems very useful to me if it gets there. It's just with the physical art thing, again, I'm not really a collector of physical art, so I don't really know exactly what people are thinking, but I do also think there's a psychological component of like you're holding this easel that was in like Picasso's house and his physical hands touched, and like I don't know, it feels a bit more,
but like that's so subjective.
You're connecting, yeah, but I think just generally I'm not even like trying to downplay the use case of NFT. I'm just trying to say like I think it's going to be harder to get people, normies like myself, to get involved with buying and selling NFTs if it's literally just like this kind of nebulous ownership concept that like there isn't much enforcement
but what's nebulous about it, I guess. But and what's not as much enforcement?
I don't know, it's just, again, it's the whole like when you physically own something, you can physically have it in your house, and if someone takes it, like you don't have it anymore. Whereas like no one can like steal my digital NFT to the point where I
that's a huge problem with the spaces. They can't, and like people get their wallets drained all the time and have these like sob stories where like, you know, they lost their Azuki or they lost their Bored Ape or whatever, and like that's actually a huge problem. That was actually one of my potential points. But so I guess to your point, like you can,
right? But I guess in a way, like they steal the certificate rather than
they steal your record of ownership. I mean, it would be like if the
versus if they
your
stole
house.
I guess like, it feels more like if someone came and stole the deed to ownership of your house, and it's like how enforceable is that?
Well, this is such an interesting conversation because it kind of just comes back to the whole idea of ownership. Like that's kind of what it is, right? Like if someone came and like if the government sees your house, I don't actually totally know, so correct me, audience members, if I'm wrong here. But like, luckily it hasn't happened to me. But like, I would imagine they basically take your title. Like whenever you buy a house, you become the title owner of the piece of property.
I guess that's true, but they also have like, I don't know, the ability to violently enforce it. Like they can have police come and just physically remove you from the house.
Kind of like hacking into your wall.
It feels a bit more like if you owned a Picasso and it came with a certificate and someone stole the certificate but not the Picasso, right? I don't know.
If you own a Picasso...
Yeah, and it came with some certificate of ownership and someone stole it. Like, it might be harder to prove it, but, like, you still have the physical Picasso in your house.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that is kind of a difference of how it works in the digital world is because, like, it's specifically tied to the record of ownership, I guess.
Yeah. I guess my point is I see the value in being able to, like, enforce, I don't know, like, removing copycats, people who just right-click save would make it more valuable. And like, especially in the gaming space, interoperability would make it more valuable. I can take it from one world to the next, which it was still some ways away, I would say, at this point.
So that's another reason why I come back to the Azuki thing that gets me excited about, like how the instead of almost like Unreal or Unity, the game foundation is Ethereum. And so then you're building all of these experiences on the blockchain, and that's interoperable. That's what I think is so cool about these different experiences is like with Azuki, they're almost building an interoperable game rather than having to convert like Fortnite to that or something. They're not talking about it like that. I just think that's kind of where it will go. So yeah, totally fascinating topic. Okay, the timer went off a while ago. Do you have
that's fine.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, so
that was my last one. But if you have another one, we can do some rapid fire stuff.
Okay, I have 3 topics, or 2 stories, 1 topic. We'll do one of them. I'm gonna get rid of the ChatGPT one. It's just an update that Microsoft invested like 10 billion or something into it. But it's pretty similar to the story we talked about last week. So there's not much to update there. But now Microsoft owns a huge chunk of it. So yay. Crazy. Other story. Okay. Sorry. Let me think. What else did I have? Oh, Meta is ending support for the first quest. That's not that interesting. I don't know. Not that many people on the first
What does
quest.
that mean, support? Like, you just can't use it
Like,
anymore.
yeah, you
It's
won't be
just...
able to use the social features. They won't update it anymore.
Gotcha.
I don't know, but the hardware in VR is moving so fast because they're so far behind consoles. Like, they kind of have to do this kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
But again, I feel like that's more boring. So I'm going to choose for us the topic I had. And the topic is cringe in new technologies, specifically related to like big companies getting involved in new technologies and just like, I don't know. It just, the general sentiment across, I'll give you some examples, but just
Yeah, give it to me.
massive cringe that like really turns people off to these new tech. I think it's very obvious in the VR space. First of all, Meta themselves is like
Yeah.
the whole Zuckerberg posting pictures from Horizons, and that's cringe. But I'm thinking more like recently Wendy's opened a world in
Okay, I got
in
you.
Horizons. And they posted like the worst video I've ever seen in the Wendy's world about how like a dinosaur attacked it. And it was just so painful. And I honestly was kind of thinking, I forget if it was last episode or 2 episodes ago, similar thing with NFTs, like
Yes, 100%.
Starbucks dropping NFTs. It's like, why the fuck is Starbucks dropping them?
Starbucks one, I have to push back on that one. The Starbucks one is actually kind of uncringe. I feel like they actually did that well because they don't even really mention, like they kind of mentioned in their press release, but like they're not like going too forward with NFT. It's more, it's like the Odyssey journey, and you get kind of collectibles and stuff. So I actually think they.
But what
did
are the
that pretty well.
collectibles?
They are NFTs.
But is it just, are they JPEG NFTs? Like,
I think they're more passes. Like I think, well, yeah, I guess probably the way I heard it explained is there's like 2 main things. One is just like a collectible, like, you know, a Pokemon card or whatever that you own. Maybe it's a JPEG. But 2, it will like actually acts as an access pass too. So like you own this thing, but it'll also give you kind of access to different things. So almost like putting their loyalty program on steroids, where they already have a great loyalty program, but here you can actually get some kind of collectible. Again, that's a whole topic of if people actually want those, which was kind of related to our conversation we just had, but then also acting as like a token gated experience to like get access to different cool events or something. I think one was like taking you to their coffee fields and some, I don't know, some like kind of interesting.
okay.
But, so I actually pushed back. I actually think they did well.
Okay, I don't know exactly what they did at all. So if there's like actual utility to it, then good on them.
Yeah, the Starbucks one is solid, but I totally agree with your sentiment.
But it's just like in general, I see this stuff and it's like, not only is it just like, it's always so transparently stupid, and like I have a lot of questions that come up every time. I'm like, who?
I have a great
maybe
one
it's
for
some
you
like
guy
who got a quest and he's like, this is awesome and I want to do this as a job, but I don't want to leave my cushy job at Wendy's HQ. And so I don't know, it's just, it's so painful to watch, and I feel like it really does like poison public opinion towards these things because it's just awful.
Yes, I would actually totally agree with you. I feel like that pushes that like narrative on any new tech, whether it's NFTs, whether it's VR. Like, this is so dumb. Like, and that's so interesting because they have such a big distribution channel. Like, they're able to tap into such a large audience, and they just blow it for everyone. Dude, okay, so literally one of my like roundup things that I wanted to say here is related to this. I wish we had a screen I could show y'all. It's literally so funny. You would die laughing. So Game of Thrones. I don't know if you heard about this. Game of Thrones dropped an NFT project this week, and it is so bad. These pictures are absolutely hysterical. It's like this art where like this. Have you ever seen the memes like salad fingers where the guy's fingers are like, so it's literally like these characters all have salad fingers and they're holding spears, but the hands aren't even touching the spears. It's like, it's just like, what are you thinking? And it's like a legit collection too. Like, it was from Warner Brothers, and it's just like, what the hell are you doing? And so that stuff, and like you even see it with big artists sometimes. Like, I think Chris Brown released like an NFT collection. It was just like,
that's cringe too.
What the hell are you doing? And I
saw that one. Didn't it like really do very poorly too?
I think it was terrible. Yeah, I think it was just like,
Chris Brown's audience probably has to be on the older side at this point. So like they probably are less like in tune with the whole NFT thing, and they're like, what the fuck is he?
And it's also, you can kind of tell when people are doing it authentically versus inauthentically, and like that seemed like an inauthentic one, and that's why I say the Starbucks one seemed like an authentic one. And like when you see Meta doing digital collectibles, I almost feel like that's almost a good point of judgment on if someone is doing this authentically or inauthentically, if they use NFT or not. Because if they do use NFT, it almost feels like they're trying to latch onto the hype. They don't really understand what the use case is. They're trying to be, oh, new NFT collection, people will buy this because like that's what people do with NFTs. That's all they do. They just spend money on random shit.
Yes.
And then, but if you see people doing like actual use case things like digital collectibles, digital fashion, stuff like that, that
Dude,
feels like, okay, maybe they actually know what they're talking about.
It's so the same. The terminology. If someone says if a company is like, we just joined the Metaverse, you can immediately cringe and know that it's the stupidest shit. And it's like, we made like a really shitty like McDonald's model and threw it in Meta Horizons, and maybe like 3 people will go check it out. And
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know.
Dude,
the funniest thing is like the best advertising is there are worlds in VR chat that are really popular. They're not made by employees of these companies, but like there's a Kmart world where people just go and role play being like a cashier at Kmart, and then a ton of people just go and like wander around. And I'm like, it honestly is like cozy. I've been and like they're just like they're just trying really hard, and they're like they're trying to be helpful, and I'm like, this is kind of fun. I don't know. It's an authenticity thing. Like, if
100%.
it feels like they're trying to sell you something, then it's shit. And if it feels like they just genuinely want to, like, I don't know, connect or do something on that front, then it's like, this is cool. I don't care if it's like really a McDonald's branded thing or I don't know.
So that feels actually very similar with VR and Web3. I guess, like you said, it's just kind of emerging technologies, because you do see a really interesting thing where like Chris Brown won't sell out any of his shit, right? But like if you're an artist who's been kind of building in Web3, whatever that means, like reaching out to people, engaging in the ecosystem, like most of those do sell out. And so it's this really interesting thing where like as a brand, and you actually saw this with like, so Nike wanted to enter the Web3 space. They, acquired Artifact, which is like a Web3 native brand. They do like a lot of really cool fashion stuff. CloneX, that's, I think we've talked about that. That's through Artifact, but it's acquired by Nike. And so I actually think Nike is like Artifact. They kind of slipped up recently, and so there's some fun on them. But I think Nike is actually a great example of doing this in a fairly solid way. Like they're being very calculated. They're kind of being
Nike makes more sense. Yeah, like I don't know. It's like a cultural thing. It's like a swag.
But dude, they could have blown it. They could have been like, hey, here's a new NFT. And so I think that what you say about the community with Kmart, I think that's so fascinating, because it almost feels like the authentic way to approach this new tech is to kind of be part of the community and like try to tap into that in like an authentic, genuine way that, you know, works for you as well, but also like isn't kind of just a cash grab on this new tech.
Yeah, no, you mentioned the music side too, and I think that's interesting because I follow like RAC and Blau on Twitter, and they're both very clearly super into the space. And so when they drop a collection, I'm like, okay, like they're participating. But then like a few artists like San Holo, I love San Holo, I think he's a great guy, but like he just randomly, I've never seen him talk about NFTs, and he's like, here's my NFT collection. I'm like, I don't know, dude. I don't know, buddy.
It's pretty interesting how that happens. Like, when does it like?
Yeah, what is the line of authenticity?
Exactly. And so then how does this tech become adopted if we as consumers have this mindset of like, oof, like they're maybe they're inauthentic doing this? Like,
I don't know. We're kind of like obsessed about that everywhere. Like back to the music thing, I feel like recently I've seen so much about like, not related to NFTs, but like people, especially I've been watching TikTok, and like if people judge your music to be like inauthentic or cringe, then you just get shit on so hard. But like if you're like, specifically for whatever reason, the genre of folk music is always seen as authentic, and just like people will kiss your ass if you make folk music because it's seen as like authentic. It's like earthy, and like I don't know, it just seems like across the board like there's this weird, really undefined like way of, you need to approach things in a way that makes people think they're authentic, but like I don't know. What if you are authentic and everyone just assumes it's inauthentic? What if Wendy's is just super stoked on like interacting with customers in the meta? I don't fucking know.
I know. That is where it almost becomes like, it's almost like the consumers start being somewhat of a barrier to entry for this tech being adopted. Like,
it's
I don't
brutal.
know. Yeah.
Like, I'm shitting on some of these companies, but like I don't think there's a way Wendy's could do it on their own where I'd be like, yeah, that's fucking cool, Wendy's. I think like the Kmart thing is funny because it's a bunch of non-Kmart people that just want to roleplay as Kmart employees.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's cute. I don't know. But if
That's
Kmart
really
themselves
interesting.
ever did it, I feel like it would not be cool at all. In
Yeah,
any
it's almost
way.
like these early adopters being almost too protective of authenticity that it
Yeah,
almost hinders the space moving forward in a sense.
totally.
But then also I can also see the other side of it though, where like yeah, when Chris Brown drops an NFT, like it does strike you as like what the hell? And so
Yeah, but
I also
maybe
see
he
that side.
is
So like
just
I don't
super
know.
stoked about it and never tweeted about it and just like,
Yeah, it's like how
I
would
don't
we
know.
know? I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Like, is there an
Nice.
obligation for us to like prove our authenticity? I mean, I guess maybe if we want to be successful, but I don't know. Do you feel
But it
like
sucks. I mean, that's what I kind of felt bad for Zagabon for the Azuki thing because like I was in the ecosystem and I saw like he'd come on Spaces, he'd talk with us, and like you could see how much he really genuinely cared, and like
yeah?
that, like the execution was just flawless. You could tell it was just very authentic. And so for him, he must have been sitting there like, I don't know how else to tell you that like. I
Yeah.
mean, like if someone's labeling you, that must be a pretty wild place to be. If someone kind of labels you a rugger, inauthentic, and you're sitting there like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it just seems like
I
there are
don't know.
circumstances that can kind of screw you, like in his case, and it's like you can be authentic, but like perception unfortunately matters a lot in these
Yeah.
spaces.
Wow. That's
I don't know.
interesting. That's an interesting topic though. I like that one about the cringe new tech because it's definitely a factor. Anything else that you got or any other rapid fire or should we? I think that's all.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Do you want to I got questions for you if
Yeah,
you
I
want
mean
to
we
answer
can just
some
give
questions.
this could be a longer one if you have. We can
Yeah,
just keep the
fuck it.
convo
Let's
going.
keep going. I feel like we're crushing it.
Yeah.
VR. I'm gonna out you a little bit. You
Do
got
it.
a
Do
VR
it.
headset. I just have been so curious about this topic because you and one of my other buddies, I feel like I convinced you and him to get a headset.
Yeah.
Both were blown away by the experience, and both, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty much never touch the headset except for in very specific circumstances.
You are
like
not
right now.
wrong.
I am curious, why do you think that is? What would bring you to use your headset more? Because there's right now on Twitter there's this big debate about like what the VR enthusiast community is like shitting on each other over, like we need better software, we need better hardware, we need wider field of view, we need lighter heads. There's this huge debate, but like I feel like it's nice that I have someone who like
Yeah,
is
yeah, I can
in
be your
that
user
position.
tester.
What do you?
That's
what
super
is your-
interesting.
Yeah,
So I guess I don't really have. So I am 100% blown away by this. When I'm getting
Yeah.
on here and I'm talking with you, it is
Yeah, I'm not
so cool.
definitely
and like
not
I almost
questioning you at all.
no, I know, and I just want to like confirm that as a user tester that like I actually do think this is so cool, but I don't really feel like I have like I almost feel like I have what I need in my normal life. Like I don't necessarily feel a need to go into a public lobby in VR and like socialize with more people because I can do that in normal life. Like I don't really feel like I'm craving more human connection over VR because like I have that. I don't really feel like I don't know. It just like the
So-
only thing.
I guess
Go
to dig into that specific, the social component. I mean, what social media, like how do you communicate with all your friends? You don't live. I'm assuming you don't live near too many of your friends now because you just moved. I
Yeah.
won't like out you.
Well, I mean,
but,
so
like,
that's a cool thing about this is that like that's actually why I like this is because we can sit, we can talk, and so I think if some of my other friends, but also not, I mean, I'm also like an interesting like all I do all day is I just sit in my room all day and just like build and like talk with people about like so like I actually don't really socialize that much like and that's like a personal choice like I don't really want to like what I want to focus on right now is like work on the startup doing this podcast doing stuff so like I like this because we're here for a purpose and like we're doing something. And so in that way, in that way I don't really like I want to be very intentional with my time. I don't really see the purpose of doing anything else in VR.
Okay,
but I
so-
also don't game. I don't play Call of Duty. I don't do any of that stuff either.
right. Okay. Well, that's fair. We can just cut out the gaming component because yeah, if you don't game, then there isn't. But still interesting on the social component. Me and you, we text, sometimes Discord, sometimes call or FaceTime. Can you envision a way in which you'd move all that onto a VR headset or an AR headset, mixed reality? Like what would there be a critical mass of people? Do you think it would take more comfort
Like
to get there?
to move text there,
Yeah, just like a primary
daily
form of
communication.
community. Yeah, like if you could just hop into VR really seamlessly with your friends, like why wouldn't you
Yeah, I
do
mean, I
that
guess
now?
it would be
Like
like,
why don't we I guess this applies to me too, but like why do we text instead of hop into a VR chat lobby?
well, because I guess it's like, I could text you and then focus on something else, respond back in like 10 minutes. Like it's kind of I
Hmm.
for all communication, it doesn't need to be like we sit down and we have like a full length conversation about it.
What
So
if
in
you
that way, I
could
guess.
have a laptop screen up on one side and then a physical representation of me sitting to your right? I could just appear. Would that be enough?
I guess it would just matter how it would plug into my daily life.
Okay.
Like I don't want to have this. Like for example, if in the future, way in the future, Apple does come out with some sick glasses, that like project my experience, and like instead of texting, it's literally like you show up in your own world. Not even VR. Like you just show up. A picture of you shows up sitting in your room, in your place, or whatever, and then like we have our conversation there. Maybe I don't know. That's interesting. I guess it's really just about convenience.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I kind
Okay,
of
I'd say two things. It's about convenience and also the ease of having things asynchronous with text. And I wonder how that would play
yeah.
out in a VR AR world. AR
I
world.
guess yeah, you need good like productivity software that's usable in the headset probably to an extent.
Hmm. Yeah, because sometimes it is really nice. Like someone texts you, you maybe see it, but you don't respond right away because you're just focused on other stuff. Like that async nature, I think, really does have a place. And it seems like
Yeah.
VR is all just replicating, social in the moment type stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it really is a combo of what everyone is thinking is
I'm also gonna be
needed.
honest, like it's not comfortable to have
Yeah,
this on. And so
totally.
like and that also probably be another thing. Like I like doing this with this headset, but with this podcast, but probably one of the most important reasons, actually, to maybe I'll edit my question. One of the most important reasons I don't use it all the time or ever, except for this, is because it is a little bit of a process. Like I have to put it on, I have to get in my kind of setup, like I have to. And so if it was just
Mhm.
something I put glasses on, I could explore. I would probably explore other things and just like check them out and like see what the hell's going on. But like because the barrier to entry is a little bit high to just put it on, like I'm only gonna do it if there's like a real purpose like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I it seems like it needs to be a combo of like comfort and like critical mass of humans using it so that it's like that's the way you communicate with I don't know. If I want to talk
Yeah.
to
No, I
Jones.
would agree. Because I mean, like, I wouldn't use my phone if the people I wanted to text didn't have phones.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. There's a big debate. A lot of people think you need like better graphics or a wider field of view, which are really
No.
nice to have. But and that's what I thought when I first got the headset. I was like, "Oh, it'd be so immersive and cool if like it really wrapped around my head and like I was fully there." But like the more I own this thing, I find myself fighting myself to like put it on and I still am in VR a lot. I go into VR chat a lot. I play games a lot just to like experience it, but like it's so much more of a fight to be like, okay, dude, just put on the fucking headset and do it.
Dude,
Whereas like with
yeah,
my phone, I just like it's so easy to just pull up like Reddit or something.
Dude, this is actually really fascinating what you just said about like, oh, if only we had this, if only we had this, because I feel like that's so easy to fall into just with any product build. Like that's what we had in the
Yeah.
past startup with like the platform we were building. It was like, oh, if only we had this, if only we had this, it would fix everything. And then like
Yeah.
most of the stuff you think about when you do that is just like luxury items. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it doesn't impact at all. What matters is like the fundamental like core reason people are using it. And that honestly like that's hard to pinpoint a lot of times. Like that's the whole thing of like product market fit is like it's kind
Yeah.
of hard to figure out like exactly what the core driver of like someone using your product is and why and
Yeah.
like how you can
I
facilitate
think
that.
yeah, I mean it is a combination of a lot of things too. It's just the balance you have to get right. And I feel like the balance even at like Meta, they're like focusing on eye and face tracking for more realistic social things, but it's like that is helpful for social reasons, but like I just keep coming back to like my friends aren't all on VR, which makes it hard for me to. I have VR
Yeah.
friends, but like my real life friends aren't on VR, and I don't talk to them there, and like the headset's uncomfortable. and I want
Dude,
lightweight ones.
yeah, I think this literally, I feel like is probably like a tech thing throughout any sector. Because like you
Hmm.
could even think about it in crypto, where it's like the most like technical people or like very immersed in it are always like, oh, if only these like more technical things happen. But from the consumer, it's literally like, no, just make it like a little bit easier for me to use. Like right here, when I'm looking at you, like I'm a normie for VR. This looks dope. Like I don't even
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine like what it would even look better. I don't know. Like this is cool. If it was like if I could just put on a pair of glasses and you'd be there, that would be probably encourage me a lot more to use it rather than
Yeah.
like making you look 2% better or something.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need to make strides in catching up all the graphics and processing power, but like also if I could just have what we're experiencing right now on like glasses or something really lightweight and comfortable, that would be I'd be way more likely to use like VR chat more
Yeah,
than if
because
the
I
graph.
also think an interesting thing is like I know I'm entering a virtual world. Like I don't
Yeah.
really expect to see the same quality that I'm seeing in the physical world. I mean, I guess that would be cool in the future vision, but like you kind of enter it
Yeah.
expecting that it's not going to be like the
I
physical world, and
think
that's fine.
yeah, there's another issue that I think applies to a lot of tech that's along the lines of what you're saying is like if you try the better version, you kind of like see the future of what it can be and you get lost in that.
Mm,
Whereas like there's a
yeah.
lot of influencers in the VR space or experts who have tried these headsets that are like 160-degree field of view, not that heavy. They're working on eye panels now that are almost like the resolution of them is almost like eye revolution resolution, so it's just like, and
Wow.
all of them say it's the most mind-blowing thing in the world and you cannot tell the difference between like real life and this.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair, that's probably a really mind-blowing experience, but like right now you have to pay like 5 grand to even touch that, and like no one's gonna do that.
Yeah, totally. It's like building the app right now. I'm like, there's so many features I want to put in, but like some are more luxury and some are more
Yeah.
core. And this kind of beautiful, that seems like I have no doubt that would be unbelievable to have like, really like real life type quality. But like if no one's on the headset, like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that's really the core thing is like, yeah, making it like I agree with you though. I think it's making it lighter, easier to use, and getting more people on it, which is an interesting one. Like maybe that's a byproduct if it's just like marketing. But yeah, I think it really
Yeah.
is like if if you didn't have a phone, I probably would be less likely to use my own phone because I couldn't text you.
Yeah. Okay, one more question for you.
Do it.
You don't game now, but I've known you for long enough to know you are a gamer. What what
Halo
is
3,
what would
baby.
be yeah, oh my god. Maybe that's the answer to this question, but what would be your like dream game? Would it be a port of some other game on VR, or would it be what kind of like game would you want to experience in VR? It can be something just in your head or a real game that you want.
I would want to experience the game of life in VR. And so, in the way of what I'm basically saying with the Azuki thing, where it's like you're dealing with real world assets, you're like basically taking your own character, your PFP, and you're building businesses, you're building lore, like you're basically doing stuff like that, and it actually gives you return on your
Okay.
time in it because you're kind of, and so I know that's like a, a silly answer because it's not really
No,
like
it's
games, but
not.
for me that is what like I get excited about. It's just like this concept of building I think is so cool, and like your little daily efforts like compounding. And so it's like that's why I think it's so cool, this whole digital world with the blockchain, because like in the real world you have like your own identity, whatever, and like you can't like transfer assets. I can't like transfer my house to you easily, but the
Yeah.
digital world like unlocks all of this stuff where like you can actually transact with real value, but like you can do it in this like anon digital identity. Like you can kind of be whoever you want. You can, there's no borders. You can transfer, really valuable assets at like, a split second. Like it opens up a really interesting opportunity space where you can like build a whole world and a whole lore and a
Yeah.
whole business like for yourself in the digital world and still have your physical one. And it's almost like these
Mhm.
two, like, I don't know, that becomes really interesting to me when you part it into something VR. And that's kind of where I imagine the Suzuki world going. It's like I put on my goggles, I go through the Suzuki Halumia and I see, my like billboard of like this business I'm running. And I'm like, it's like, it's like real, but in the digital world. It's kind of, yeah.
I completely agree. I feel like um, MMOs and massively multiplayer games have kind of just been this like dream of what sorry, VR
Wait, what
should.
does I always see that? I always thought that meant some kind of shooter game. Is that
No,
not
no,
what
no.
it means?
It's just a massively multiplayer game in that you're in a world and there can be thousands of other people in the world. So it's like World of
Oh,
Warcraft,
interesting.
Final Fantasy, but people have always wanted that to be like. Sorry, let me take a drink real quick. I'm
That
struggling.
actually is so interesting because I like almost every NFT project talks about a game, and when they say in it, when I saw a game and I saw MMG, I thought that was like some kind of shooter. But okay,
No,
that makes
it's
so
like a
much more sense.
persistent world, and like some of them you can like set up shops and sell things and like
That makes a lot
specialize.
more sense.
RuneScape 2 is technically an MMO if you played that back in the day.
Got you. Yeah.
But
Oh, dude,
I
love
think that's kind of like a lot of VR is kind of driven like what people's hope for it is driven by like fantasy and media. There's this anime called Sword Art Online that the founder of Oculus was super into, and the premise of it was it's this world where you lay down in a bed, you put a headset on, and it's indistinguishable from the real world, and you can like have professions there and you feel pain and you feel like everything, and like it's fully interactable. And I feel like that's like low key everyone's long-term hope for VR. And it's so interesting that you don't have this context and that's also your dream for like what VR can be, is like this
yeah, dude.
massive
That
world you just hop into, and like you have kind of, it can be a separate identity. You can just be the same person you are in real life. You can just be what you want and like, but experience things that aren't possible
okay.
in the
I have
real
a question
world.
for you on that. So, because
Yeah.
obviously a lot of the VR community is kind of hostile to blockchain. So, when they think about that world, or maybe you, when you think about that world, do you think about it as those assets don't hold value, or and it's all just kind of like how you play Call of Duty, where it's just kind of like in that game, or like how do you
No,
think about that?
they hold value. I think it's interesting with MMOs. You can sell items in that game and you can sell money in that game for real world currency. So there is kind
Oh,
of
that is
like
interesting.
and it's MMOs are cool. I've played them. I don't really love them because they're just kind of like the actual game mechanics of them are grindy and unfun to me. But
MML, just to clarify, so just to make sure that's like RuneScape or Skyrim.
not Skyrim. Skyrim's a single player game.
Oh, okay,
The
gotcha,
key
gotcha,
component
gotcha.
is like
Different,
you
bunch
can
of
go to
different
the
users all
city
over the
center and
place.
there could be like thousands of people there that you can interact
Okay,
with,
got you. That makes
which
sense.
makes
That
it
makes sense.
very real worldy in a social sense. Like
Okay,
but yeah,
got you.
so you can get really rare items in that game and then you can sell them and you can get that currency in a real world currency if you want.
Got you.
So yeah, ownership's important, but I guess if one of those experiences existed in the way that you're saying, I don't know how that wouldn't be centralized as part of the thing. In which case that kind of negates the need for blockchain.
Well, so
a
I
little
guess
bit.
what I think is happening is that that's happening right now on Ethereum. Like I think everyone's talking about these games. I think Ethereum is essentially what'd you say, the MMO or whatever. I think
Yeah.
that is that. And it's just so interesting. Like this thesis is something I'm developing right now, but it's like that is how I'm basically interacting in that world. Like I have different assets. I'm like using them in different experiences. Like I'm going into the Azuki experience with my Azuki asset. I'm going into the Yuga experience with my Bored Ape, and like I can trade them with different people. I'm building my lore. Like people are knowing
Yeah.
Fable as my, kind of digital identity, and it's kind of like growing from there. And like low key, it's funny right now because Twitter is almost like a central part of this kind of Twitter and Discord, which I know are like
Hmm.
those are almost central parts of this game. But like the Ethereum is almost like the backbone of the asset class where you're getting real world, but like in the way you're interacting with the community on Twitter, you're building your presence. It's almost like a game of building your credibility on Twitter, like you would in the real world with like
Yeah.
celebrity or whatever. And so in that way, it is almost like, yeah, it's just like interesting thing about like
Well, that's like
the,
it's Web 2y in a way. It's 2D and like
it is, but the
well, it's
yeah,
not
exactly.
it's not fully. But yeah, I just wonder like how
Oh, you were talking about Web 2 graphic wise, not ethos.
yeah,
wise.
yeah. It's like how are you
Yeah,
going
right
to
now,
translate that
100%.
into 3D?
Well, so
And
that's what I thought was so fascinating about the Halumia experience is because
yeah.
that's not necessarily immersive right now, but
Yeah.
it did paint this picture of this world where you could totally see that develop into a virtual world that does run on the, or not, maybe the game engine doesn't run on the blockchain, but like the assets interoperate with the blockchain. And that's how you're kind of, interacting in this world and owning your assets.
Yeah.
I don't know the technicals of like how a game engine gets built on the blockchain or how that interoperates. Don't know that, but I imagine that's possible. And so that's how I kind of see it growing.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the ethos, I think that's very different because with Fortnite, like so in this way, I'm almost comparing Fortnite with Ethereum in a sense because Fortnite's its own game, and in what I'm saying, Ethereum's basically its game. The difference there, though, is Fortnite has this thing where like it's centralized, right? And so they can do
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want. The blockchain is immutable code; no one can change it. And
Yeah.
so in that way, you're operating this game with the security and safety that the game's not going to shut down. No one's
Yeah.
going to take your assets, and so that gives you comfortability to like really invest your time and capital into that game and to continue to
Totally.
grow it.
That's a huge issue in gaming in general, I feel like, is like investing in games, especially if you start seeing like player counts decrease and all that. Like that's one thing, that's one of the things that like keeps me interested in blockchain is the promise that like maybe one day this can be used to like let our digital identities live on beyond Fortnite or beyond some MMO that we have, and we can like take that and move it on to the next place.
Yeah, dude. I mean, yeah, that's why I think it's so exciting. And that's why I was curious about. Also, my headset just said it was low, by the way. But that's why I was curious about. I'm also looking over here because I accidentally positioned myself over here with my mic. But
Damn it.
it might be time to wrap it up. But that's why I was curious about that question of like when you imagine these worlds where you're kind of living in them and you're spending a lot of your time in them and they are centralized, how you kind of think about that, where it could just be, the company could fail, right?
Yeah.
And then like what happens then if you spend all your time there?
Yeah,
I think that's actually thinking about it. That's actually one of the big things is like if we were to compare, say, Ethereum's a game, like it's just code that runs, so it's not ever going to shut down. But a company can always shut down, and then in that way, you lose all your progress, all your shit. Like your world kind
Mhm.
of collapses.
Yeah, there's plenty of excellent YouTube videos of children throwing fits because their parents deleted their Minecraft world. So I get it. I
Yeah.
also, not even making fun of those kids. I've spent
Dude,
insane
same, dude.
amount of
I feel like
times
I was
in
in there
games
too.
where if I lost all my progress in it, I would be so upset, dude.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
just,
and
I
that's
don't
why
know.
it excites me building on Ethereum as almost this game I'm playing, where it's
Yeah,
like you can, it's those aren't going to go anywhere. I mean, unless the blockchain somehow dies, but like, I mean, then the whole experiment failed. So
yeah. Damn.
fascinating.
Okay, that's so cool that your answer is just as a non-VR person, it's the same as like the most diehard enthusiast. I don't know why that just like gets me stoked that like the vision is just across the board the same. And I
So
hope
everyone wants
companies
this
like
kind of vision of this game.
yeah, it's the dream has always been making just this MMO where everyone can exist together and you can have professions and you can make
Is
your
that
own
VR chat? Like, is that
in
or
it. It's
is
a
that what they're
bit
going for?
um I guess sort of. It's a little different because it's just like very social. Like you can't make a name for yourself being like ex. I
It's not
don't.
like real economic activity, kind of. It's not like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
building a business here. And
I guess. I mean, I don't know. At the same time, like especially on the music front, there are people who've really made a name for themselves in the VR chat community as like VR
huh.
chat DJs and musicians, and like they're really well known. They're dancers that they post dancing because they got the full body tracking and they like so it's
Yeah.
I think it is a little bit like that. There aren't really any gamey mechanics to this whole experience yet, and it's fully user created. But yeah, I guess you totally can make your own identity here, and like it's small. It's not. It's a very popular game, but it's still a VR generally a VR game. Like you can play it
Yeah.
non VR, but people don't.
So
Yeah,
in that case, what would happen if? Well, I won't even ask that.
if VR chat died.
Yeah, I guess that was. But I guess I mean, yeah, I guess that was gonna be my question. But
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
sure
know. I
they'll have
mean,
other social
it's
platforms or.
yeah, people. I mean, it would definitely hurt their reputation. I think because I think they're known as VR chat DJs, and that's how a lot of people like experience them. Is they go every Friday to see Two Tone Disco play at Shelter, and like
Got you.
if he wasn't doing that anymore because VR chat died or there was some barrier to entry to seeing him everywhere else, like that community dies, and like I'm sure people will follow him wherever he goes, but like that's very core to his digital identity in a sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Any other questions or is that? As your
Nope.
user tester? Because my battery's running low on my headset.
Yeah, I
It's about
think.
to die.
Yeah, we might have to wrap up then.
Nice, dude. This was a good one. I feel like this is a
Yeah.
long one, but I feel like there's some good conversation here. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty fun to just talk about all this stuff. Just see where
I
it
know.
goes.
That's the thing about this podcast that hopefully if you're watching this you enjoy is like I just don't know that much about Web3. Joe isn't involved in the VR space, so it's so nice being able to just like get an opinion, especially
Yeah.
because I'm so in the echo chamber of like VR enthusiasts on Twitter.
Dude, and I'm in the chamber of Web3 enthusiasts.
on everything. So it's so interesting seeing how you diverge from like their opinions, because you like, and I
How
think
so?
it's
How so?
well, it's just in like what you find important. A lot of the enthusiasts think like you need wider field of view and
Oh,
we need
gotcha,
to focus
gotcha.
on PC
Yeah,
VR,
that's
but like, but then you talk to someone who's less into it and like if you want this to be mainstream, but then at the same time there are like these core promises of VR, and I think it probably goes the same the other way of like what blockchain is that like everyone kind of gets. And it's interesting that you like confirm that like yeah, I want this same like digital world where I have like this identity that I make my own. And then for me, I think I'm guessing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I get the importance of like owning things in the digital world and being able to like solidify my identity through that essentially. I don't know, maybe
dude,
that's
I think
wrong.
it's simply like, okay, say, like, just think about the physical world. Like, the only reason anyone does literally anything is because they can own what they earn, right? Like, if I built a startup and someone else had my IP, like, why the hell would I even bother doing it?
Yeah.
And so it's like property rights completely drive the fundamentals of economic activity. And so if you're going to have this world that exists like everyone's vision, like that we are agreeing on, then it just seems like that's so fundamental to that as well. It's just like, because that's how it works in the physical world. It will I think work the same way in the digital world, because it's just human nature of, you're not going to want you have no incentive to work hard or do anything if someone's going to take away your shit.
True.
Yeah. So yeah, it's fascinating. Good sesh.
Great
Dude.
sesh.
All right.
All right. Well, to wrap it up, I'm Rick. This is Jones. This is our third episode, and now we're going to be getting on a weekly schedule. So if you're watching, get ready. Content is coming.
Hell yes. Tune in every week, baby. We will be bringing it. So yeah, appreciate y'all tuning in. Peace.
Peace.